Deployment is the hardest skill to gain in Warhammer 40k, but it's also the most critical. So today I'm giving you a easy framework where you will always get it correct. Stay freaking tuned. Guys, I'm Jonathan Arkin from Happy Corrupted Wargaming. On this channel, we make you the best possible Warhammer 40k player in the freaking world because that is my mission. I am a doctor of chiropractic neurology. I am an MMA fighter. I'm a top 100 player in the entire world. I love strategy, tactics, and critical thoughts, and I use that to help my clients make it to the WTC teams or to dominate in their GTs and majors that they attend. So I bring this information free to you so that you can become the best possible player ever. And in today's video, we're breaking down the 5 rules for deployment. I've already got them posted on the screen for you. I'm going to tell them to you, I'm going to explain them, and I'm going to show them to you on TTS so that you know exactly how to make use of these. This will be short and sweet. Let's get right into it. Here's the deployment Bible, everybody. First off, you have to be able to reach your identified staging zones. I'm going to define staging zone for you right now. All that means is where can you stand safe from shooting, yet you are still able to exert your influence upon the battlefield. The second thing you have to do when it comes to deployment, and remember, I'm going to show you absolutely all of these in full detail so you'll understand how to apply it. You must be able to survive and respond to early pressure from your opponent. When you see what your opponent's army is, this will tell you what reserves you're going to want to keep on the table, because that's going to tell you what you need to be able to respond with. For example, if your opponent is playing an army with crazy amounts of speed and power, let's talk about like World Eaters, and you are playing Space Marines and you have decided that you're going to put your Gladiator Reaper and another tank in reserves, that's a bad idea because he's just going to flood the board turn 1 if he goes first. You're not going to have the firepower to kill him, and then he'll get into you. So your opponents, what they can bring to bear, will determine how much you can have in reserves. Then, pre-measure your threat ranges. So how far and how fast can your opponent move? How far and how fast can they shoot? Remember, a standard battle tank moves 10 inches. Do not be exposed, meaning make sure that your opponent cannot shoot you from their deployment zone to your deployment zone unless that exposure serves you. I'll go into details on that in just a moment. And then lastly, be able to score reasonable secondaries in turn 1. Now, I'm going to go to the TTS screen, and I'm going to break all these down in explicit detail for you. And here we have it. Through the magic of editing, you guys see my TTS screen. So this is a GW7, and we're on a tipping point. And I'm going to be utilizing the Blood Angels to give you guys an example of how deployment works. The very first thing I do when I look at a table is I identify my staging points. My staging points are really, really simple. A staging point is where can you stand safe from shooting, yet you are still able to exert your influence on the battlefield. Can you figure out where on this table a staging point might be? I'm going to give you 2 seconds. All right. I'm done waiting. Here we go. This is obviously a staging point. You can stand safe. You can also hold your objective here, which is a bonus, although that's not necessarily required to be a staging point. You can hold your natural expansion objective here, but you can also stand safe from shooting. Your opponent can't shoot you. You can also make it incredibly challenging for your opponent to charge you, because if you just stand 1.1 inches away from the wall, they can't even really charge you unless they come all the way around. So these guys are basically immune while they're standing right here, but they're also able to get out and to charge. This is also obviously a great place for, say, fast-moving Sanguinary Guard. Fast-moving any elite infantry in the game loves standing right here. This is a staging point. This would also be a staging point for, say, a vehicle, because a tank can't be shot here, right? You can just draw these little lines and make it so that you can't really be shot here, which means this is a great place for a tank to stage. The problem is, how the heck are you going to get your tank there? So the very first thing we do is we identify all of our staging points. On this map, it's right here, and then it's going to be right here in the center, right here, and then I'm going to give you one more I'm going to call a contingent staging point. This is a staging point right here with a contingency. The contingency being, are you comfortable getting shot from this specific angle? And many times the answer might be yes, or if you have a lone up you can't be shot there, then the answer could be yes. So you can stage here. Of course, there's a little risk involved. You can stage here basically with no risk. You just make sure that you draw your lines, and we'll get to lines in just a second. Same thing right here on this angle as well. So you can stage into these little places where you can't be seen. And this will tell you how to deploy. So if I'm trying to get to this objective marker, this is my deployment, well, I might infiltrate my scouts here, but I'm also guaranteed 100% to deploy my Sanguinary Guard right here, because I know my Sanguinary Guard turn 1, regardless of whether I go first or if I go second, they're going here. because I've identified my staging points, which means I'm deploying so that I can get to the staging point. This is a staging point I've deployed so that I can get there. This is a staging point I've deployed so that I can get there. Mephiston goes here. He's alone up, so it doesn't matter if he's touching. He can get here. You deploy so you can get to where your staging points are. That is the number one rule that we have to follow. The next thing that we always want to be looking at doing is making sure that we are respecting our opponent's pressure. So on this map, we've got a fairly decent distance here, but it's less than on some. So if my opponent wants to do a turn 1 charge, say a 20-inch move to charge into Mephiston, am I comfortable with that? Why, yes, I am. Mephiston would fight first, and Dante could heroic intervene and screw my people up. The number 3 thing that we are looking at, we are trying to make sure that we have identified lanes. So I'm doing this right here. With a unit's standard battle tank, they move 10 inches, so they go off the deployment zone 10 inches. And then if you draw that maximum line of sight right here, boom, he cannot see my Gladiator Lancer with a 10-inch move. Now, if they have Assault, that could change things, and then maybe they can go up here, and maybe they could see my Lancer, which that would potentially change my deployment zone, but actually wouldn't change it off of a 12-inch move. They would have to probably go like a 13 or a 14 to be able to see my Lancer here, and that might change my deployment. But because I pre-measured how far my opponent can move, I know that I'm safe standing right here because I'm behind this red line. Same thing over here. I know that if my opponent moves here turn 1, he can't see any of my units, and that would be pretty darn far up the board. So I know I'm safe there. So I've identified my opponent's threat ranges. Then, in the last step, we're going to be looking at, can I get reasonable secondaries in turn 1? Am I positioned to be able to get a tempting target and area denial, a tempting target cleanse? I'm in a position where I can grab any secondary in the game right now based off of what I possibly can draw. The only things that I might not be able to score in turn 1 is kill secondaries, because those are 100% under the control of where my opponent is standing. But I can get to any corner of the battlefield. I can get engaged for 4. I'm not saying I would necessarily, but I can. I can get tempting target. I can get area denial. I can get it with a variety of units, so I am not at any loss for how am I going to score anything that I draw. This is basically a flawless deployment, whether I go first or go second. If I go first, these guys advance right to their staging point. Dante probably just moves slightly up to be here. These guys will either go score secondary or they'll run away. Lancer and Ball Predator probably stay in the exact same places. Potentially, I even put Mephiston in the center to try to bait out my opponent's big nasty units to try to kill Mephiston, which will then set me up for a really big disastrous charge with Dante in the following turn. If I go second, literally nothing's going to happen to me because I'm perfectly safe. Say the scouts are deployed right here. They should be able to scout back into safety in this little pocket. This is a perfect deployment. I'm going to demonstrate this one more time on a different deployment so that you guys can really grasp this concept. And then you're going to really have these rules. So before we do the second deployment, let's make sure that we actually have this stuff grasped really, really well. So I'm just going to swap my view here. Deployment Bible. 1, be able to reach your identified staging zones. 2, be able to survive and respond to early pressure. Pre-measure your threat range. Don't be exposed. And then be able to score reasonable secondaries in turn 1. Make sure you memorize these. And let's get on to the second deployment I have for you to give you guys yet another example of this so that you're going to get this right all the time. And trust me, guys, if you follow these rules, you're going to be sitting very, very pretty. So this deployment would be slightly different, but I can do this deployment against basically any army in the entire game. Scouts are deployed in such a... first things first, what are my staging points? Let's identify the staging points. Clearly, this is a staging point. Clearly, this is a staging point. And you could make the argument that this would be a staging point, but I'm not really exerting my influence from here. I'm really just kind of holding my natural expansion. So I wouldn't really identify this as a staging point. And just as a caveat, there is a little caveat to this. This right here, where the infiltrators are, is clearly not a staging point for the infiltrators because they're not exerting their influence on the battlefield. They're just holding here, which is not a problem. But it might be a staging point for a Gladiator Lancer because from right here, my Gladiator Lancer could shoot on this lane, right? So he can safely stand here from shooting, and he is able to exert his influence in this angle or in this angle, right? So this could be a pretty good staging point for a Gladiator Lancer, for example. Now, let me walk you through the rest. I have to get here, and I have to get here. Well, how the heck am I getting my army here? Well, it's pretty simple. They're just going to literally move a few inches up to be here, and then they'll be staged. How am I going to get here? Well, it's simple. I'm going to just move my Sanguinary Guard there, and then I'm completely staged. If I go second, my scouts pop back behind cover. My scouts pop up back behind cover. If I go first, they can get me an area denial. They can get me a tempting target, a cleanse. They can also just move forward and move block the crap out of my opponent. Or if I don't have any of that stuff to do, I can just hide them. No freaking problems. This deployment here really protects me on all fronts. So I know how I'm getting my staging points. Number 2, can I deal with my opponent's pressure? Well, this is search and destroy, which means 18-inch deployments. So if they want to turn 1, send their models into my jump pack assault intercessors here, well, I have set up a turn 1 heroic intervention with Dante to screw them up doing that. So he's probably not going to do that. So I have accounted for turn 1 pressure. Number 3, I've drawn the lines. I know where I can safely deploy. As long as I'm behind these lines, my opponents cannot shoot me anywhere. Now, I accept right here that my opponent could shoot my Gladiator Lancer. I think I drew this line a little bit wrong, but that's okay. Let's just redraw this. I accept that my opponents could shoot me from right here. And if they do touch this line to shoot me, that means that their relevant unit is about to get messed up by my relevant units. So even though I am exposed here, I'm exposed in such a way that I accept the exposure. The exact same thing for this Ball Predator. If my opponent wants to move down here to shoot my Ball Predator, I accept that exposure because then, now my Lancer could potentially move out, but then I get early turn 1 charges with my Sanguinary Guard, all sorts of other things. So this is an example of where I am exposed, but I accept that exposure because it gives me the ability to get my opponent's units out into the open early on. And then lastly, can I get secondaries that I need to get? Well, I think we've already answered that. Yes, I can get into area, I can get cleanse, I can get tempting, I can get any secondary that is possibly under my control right now, and I am feeling really darn good about this deployment. I do not care if I go first or if I go second. These are great deployments almost regardless of the opponent you are playing. There can always be a little bit of nuance. So it's like, for example, over here, if my opponent moves 10 inches with a standard battle tank, they can't shoot any of my Sanguinary Guard, they can't shoot my JPI. If my opponent is shooting me from right here, they also cannot shoot my Gladiator Lancer. So if they want to shoot this Lancer, they're going to have to come all the way over here to shoot it. I totally accept that. Now, on some armies, you might not be willing to put the Gladiator Lancer here because maybe your opponent can go really fast with, I don't know, maybe a move through wall strat to shoot you here, at that which point you're not deployed well. But I am deployed great for my staging points. I know how I'm going to get there. I know how I'm going to get my secondaries. I know I'm safe behind my lines. I know the models that aren't safe are not safe for a specific reason. Like, for example, I'm very comfortable losing the Ball Predator as long as it forces my opponent to expose himself turn 1. These are things that are awesome. This is a masterful deployment that will serve me well. So one more time, let's go through the rules for deployment. Let me open this back up. I'll go back to the PowerPoint view because I really need you guys to get this. This is going to be very relevant for 11th edition, just like it is for 10th edition. Be able to reach your identified staging zones. A staging zone is where you can stand safe from shooting, yet you are still able to exert your influence upon the battlefield. 2, be able to survive and respond to early pressure. This can determine what you have in reserves. Pre-measure threat ranges. Standard battle tanks move 10. Just keep that in your mind. Don't be exposed unless that exposure serves you, like I showed you in the example of the Ball Predator. And then be able to score reasonable secondaries turn 1. Now, you know my philosophy. I don't really care about scoring secondaries, but I still want to score the ones that are easy to score. So I keep that in mind. Guys, this is the Deployment Bible. If you follow these rules and you practice these rules, you will become amazing at deployment and you will become a better Warhammer 40K player. If you like this content, like and subscribe, hit that bell button, share it with your friends, and until next time, crump on. Bye-bye.